Hello and welcome back to the Nasty Metal Productions channel here at YouTube, and welcome to another Friday review. Today I am here to review Outsider, the new third album from Ventura, California based heavy metal power trio Night Demon, released back on March 17th via Century Media. So without further ado, well, let's begin. Now, before I get into any of my thoughts on Outsider, you know what I have to do. I have to do a track listing rundown so I can tell you folks what are the songs that are on this album, how many tracks that are on this album, and what is the time length for this album. Since this consists a total of 9 tracks, it clocks in at the length of 37 minutes and 11 seconds. So, these 9 tracks are beginning with the very short intro titled Prelude, then into the title track, Obsidian, Beyond the Grave, Rebirth, Escape from Beyond, Awake, and then there is The Wrath. That is pretty much the remainder of what is the actual album, which, if you take away the last track here, which I'll get into, and just leave these 8 tracks, it pretty much clocks in around 34 minutes. But with the CD pressing for this album, they include a bonus track, and that's where we get into The Last Day, because it is only, like I stated, an exclusive track to the CD pressings of the album, because of, I'll get into further with The Last Day here into the review, but there it is. That's what extends the album into being 37 minutes and 11 seconds, is just because of The Last Day track being bonus. So, more on this in a bit here. So, there you go. There's your 9 tracks for Outsider. Well, speaking of Outsider, you know what that sound is. That's the sound of my review notes. Alright, let's get into this. Now, I've been following these guys from the very beginning, even getting Curse of the Damned as a new release. And I can easily say that Outsider comes across as ambitious. While it does retain that formula that Night Demon have created since their debut 2012 EP, they found a way to sort of tweak it here, so that they wouldn't make the same album twice, and I think that was intentional here. And this has its own aura to it, its own distinct mystique, that after giving this several repeated listens, I found it rather compelling. And that's saying some, because I also like the previous album too, Darkness Remains. Again, it may be even more compelling compared to the previous work. It's just, this album marks the band's attempt at creating something that is concept-based. It's a tale of a character named Johnny, who is surrounded with alternate realities, mysterious portals, and the supernatural, intertwined with universal human feelings of alienation, loss, regret, and revenge. Inspired by Leatherby's lifelong affinity for, well, horror movies, as well as his pandemic-induced exile in the countryside of Northern Ireland. It's a tale about a young gravedigger named Johnny, like I've stated before, who again is the main character of the story, who's been working for his family business with his father, living in a small town that is surrounded by mysterious green mist. And it's been said, if for those who dare to enter are to never be seen again. The story begins with Johnny deciding to leave the only place he's ever known. After having an argument with his father, Johnny makes his journey with, well, entering into the night. And while reaching the end of the town, Johnny comes face to face with the mysterious green mist, and thus the story unfolds. As he comes out through the portal, he soon wanders into a town that suspiciously looks like his. He then starts to come face to face with people that look like him, to which they get referred to as shadows. To which he then sees his shadow self. But of course, with this comes the realization that these shadow versions are not what they seem. Now, we'll go into full in-depth details of this nicely creative story, but I will give out pieces little by little here, just to be safe, at least for those who have yet to hear this album. But if you are already familiar with the album, it won't matter either way. From the very beginning, with the synth-like intro correctly titled Prelude, I could already tell that this album was going to be thematic. From here, it transitions into the first real song of the album, well, that being the title track, which is an upbeat rocker with infectiously catchy riffs. This song is what sucks the listener into the story. The album gets even more moving with Obsidian, one of my absolute favorite songs from this album. It's driven by heavy riffs, and at times reminding me of modern day Saxon, even at times throwing in some thrashy sort of vibes to it. Again, some thrashy riffing and so on, but has that Night Demon charm to it. The song also drives the story a little more further, beginning to make things interesting to follow, dealing with then somewhat drunken, emotionally exhausted Johnny fighting his shadow self, to which ends with our Johnny, well, I'll let you find out for yourself. But you already know, of course, since you've already probably listened to this album already. Well, follows further into the next track, which is Beyond the Grave, which further deepens the story. It's the album's so slow, brooding track that has a slight doom feel. From here on, with other tracks like with the Thin Lizzy inspired riffage of Rebirth, to the sharp edgeness of Escape the Beyond, to the final two epic songs, again, Awake and The Wrath, which in these songs sees Johnny return to his reality, but not without one last surprise that ends the story with a little twist that drives the story to its climax. So, that would be the end of most of the main songs that pretty much drive this story further and further. These are the only concept-based songs on the album, because the CD's last track, The Last Day, has no connection to the story. It was previously released last year as a single. But to kind of elaborate a little bit on this track, it's a fast-driving track with some thrashy riffs. So I guess that they're kind of playing around with some really more speedier, more heavier kind of sounds. Again, more of the very speed metal variety in a way, even though they always kind of had that, but it was more on that sort of classic new wave or British heavy metal style, again, like early Iron Maiden and some of those classic Neat Records kind of bands like Jaguar and so on, and Diamond Head, and just to kind of name a few classic new wave or British heavy metal bands. But here, they're really kind of playing around with something that's a little bit more heavier. Again, taking some influence maybe from like Exciter and early Metallica and so on. So that's where I'm going to get there. And again, it's a very cool track. So with a great selection of songs that are nicely paced, that are set to drive in such a very fascinating creative story, one that could think that can make Stephen King proud. But man, this resulted in Night Demon's most ambitious album to date. So here we go. I guess from now, I should now give out my rating for the album, and what I'm giving Outsider is a straight solid 10 out of 10. Again, normally, I don't know. At first when I was listening to this, maybe I wasn't feeling a 10 out of 10, even though I've seen plenty of people, even including at this point my good friend Stormrider, who obviously is a big fan of this album already and was really telling me that just was really enjoying this album a lot. So I wanted to give this album as much chances, but each time I was, repeatedly listening to this, I feel it just got better and better to the point where I think I might now have to say that this is probably Night Demon's best work. And I know when Curse of the Damned came out, that was highly praised by plenty of people, especially those who I'll subscribe to, and even at times even friends with. There was plenty of people that was really hyped up Curse of the Damned. And not so much with the albums afterwards, mostly like Darkness Remains. But I gotta say, this album I think interested me a lot more than Curse of the Damned. There's just so much more going on in this album that I think than anything before. This is a great album from beginning to end, and I really love this. This is really one of the best albums so far to come out this year. And we still have to get to some other great ones that are coming out within this year. This is going to be a stacked year, it seems to be. And I can't wait to get to some of the other great massive albums that come out within this year. So there you go. Again, if you've already listened to Outsider, again, if you have any thoughts, whether they be positive or negative, you can leave them in the comment section below. But if you've never checked out Outsider and you're kind of curious, I recommend. I'm going to leave you a link to, of course, to the Bandcamp page and everything, and so you can check this album out. It is really good. Support this album. It's good. So with that, I hope all of you enjoyed. This is Temporary Thrasher saying I'm out, and I'll see you all later. Take care, everyone.